Hello.
Welcome to our podcast. My name's Aspen,
My name is Elias.
I'm Cadence. I'm Julia.
and we're going to be talking about if the criminal justice system is broken or not. I'm pretty sure we all have the same point of view, right?
Yeah,
That
that
it's
it is.
broken.
That is
Yeah.
broken.
For the most
Yes.
part.
Yes.
Okay. So our first topic will be sexual assault. I think that you. Okay, stop. Okay, so sexual assault is one of the the least reported crime in America. Why do you guys think that?
People are genuinely just like they don't think anything's gonna happen. Like, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
They're not gonna follow through with the case. They're not actually gonna get the justice that they deserve, and so they kind of just feel like, what's the point?
And then I also feel like that's majority of it, but also they're scared of
Mhm.
their person,
Like
you
how
know.
much time they usually get? Isn't it like 46?
Well, actually, let me
Mm.
see. I have that right here. They're supposed to get 3, 6, or 8 years, depending on the severity of the crime. Or if they're under 14 years old, they get 9, 11, 13 years.
But honestly, most of the time they get like 6 months to a year.
Yeah,
Like,
if it's like their first offense.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
I feel like sexual assault is a big offense and shouldn't be
Yeah.
treated as a, like a first offense, didn't do anything wrong ever.
Mhm.
And honestly, I think they should all be treated the exact same, like you said.
Yeah.
In 2019, right?
Y-
Okay, yeah, 2019, there was a biological male who what's the terminology for that?
He was, yeah.
Trans.
He was
He
biologically a
transferred over
man.
into a woman.
Yeah, but he was
And-
trans woman.
Yes, and she raped a 10-year-old in the bathroom, and I think honestly just now something's getting done
Mhm.
about that. So that's quite a long period of time, but she got life in prison. But I don't
70
understand
years.
why life in prison is that's for that, but for just a regular offense, it's just
Yeah, and it's
7
not
years.
that like, you know,
Mhm.
like applause for the people who actually did what they needed to do about it. 70 years is a perfectly justifiable
Yeah.
sentence.
But
But why are we only limiting it to?
why was it a
Yeah,
why
why
did
was
it just so
transgender
happen to
woman-
be
Yeah.
a trans woman? 12 to 34 is the you're more likely to be raped within that age range, and
Right.
that's honestly hella early to be what's the word I'm looking for?
Exposed,
Yes,
yeah.
exposed to that.
And isn't it like really? It's more likely for undergrads to
Yes.
be sexually assaulted.
Mhm. Being
Or
on college
harassed.
campus.
Yeah.
I mean, we've heard multiple stories about sexual harassment happening on
Mhm.
college campuses, and the student didn't even get kicked out of the school.
Yeah.
Like I'm assuming.
They don't. They say they take it seriously, but they don't.
No.
Honestly,
I think it's all about money. Who
Yeah.
has the most money?
and rank. If they're a really good athlete, like just people who know people, honestly, like they.
And that
Get
just
away with
sucks
a lot of
because of
shit.
the effect that it takes on a person, like a woman or a man.
Yeah.
That's
Both of
not
them-
talked about either.
yeah.
Men can be sexually assaulted too.
And harassed.
Yes.
Yes.
Like, it is not limited to women, and I think it's so hard for men because they are seen
They don't
as the
believe that.
dominant people.
Yeah.
They are seen.
They're like, why couldn't you're stronger than her? You're bigger than her.
Why couldn't you just
couldn't
push her
you
off?
just-"
Why couldn't you just
Exactly.
tell
men
her
can
no?
be drunk too. Men
Yeah.
can
Men
get
can
blackout
be
drunk too.
I feel like a big thing that would solve it. Like, I don't know, if I had like an interest and like I were to go and do it and I know I'd only get like 8, it should honestly be like a higher limit, or there should be a bigger consequence. Because say if it was like a quarter of my life or half of my life, I would probably honestly like rethink it. Because
That's exactly
Like-
what we're saying. Like
Yeah.
with the transgender
I agree.
woman, she got a life. Like she got life in prison.
I think honestly that was
And I
like,
think that's a good, like honestly, a good decision.
Yeah.
Like I applaud that shit.
But
But that should
why
happen for
doesn't anybody else
everything.
get
I
that?
think
Every
yes, that was an appropriate sentence. It sucks that it happened to her. Just like, and I guess in her situation, because she was like trans, I guess. But,
And-
you know,
I mean, yeah, that makes sense because
Like,
they
why
also have
did
to
it
think
have
about
to-
the media. Media controls what you see.
Media went
Yeah.
crazy over that shit just
Yeah.
because she's a transgender woman.
Mhm.
You yes, we see it because we talk about it, but do you know how many oblivious people
Yeah.
are out there that have their news that are not anything about sexual assault or
Honestly,
anything.
I bet a lot of people could look up. I think there's if you look at your sex offender registry list where you live, like it'll show you on the block. A lot of you, or a lot of people, probably live by a sexual like offender that they just don't know about it, a predator. You know what I mean? And they literally have no idea.
I agree with that.
It's crazy because you can look it up too.
That's what I'm saying.
But they're like, oh, you know, he or she portrays as this nice person who has their life put together, so
Mhm.
automatically not a sexual offender.
Yeah.
Automatically
And
just
people always blame the victim. What was she wearing? That pisses me off when people say, "What was she wearing?"
Who gives a
what Were
fuck?
you What were you doing? Were you drunk? Like,
why does it matter?
what does that have anything to do with it? And especially
was-
with people who have a like bad background, like prostitutes or like just
Uh-huh.
high risk people, just because they live a high risk lifestyle. Sorry, I'm like, it doesn't mean like they're asking for any of that.
No.
They need consent just as much as anybody else.
There are multiple ways of being like sexually assaulted or harassed. It's like not just rape. You know what I mean? Like they're being groped.
South
Being
Padre.
being catcalled like on the side of the road on the street walking is sexual harassment. And what else? There's a lot more. Like it's not just one thing, and a lot of people don't realize that they don't think or they don't feel that. That's what I was
They don't think that it's not like it's important enough.
I feel
to
like
report because
victims are getting questioned about the other person's decision to sexually assault them or harass them. Like, why are we getting questioned for what their brain was thinking? Like, I don't fucking know. I have no idea what I did. I did nothing wrong, but he or she decided to come up to me and do that out of their own brain. I had no idea that was going to happen.
I don't really have any like personal experiences, but I've had people who were around me who were sexually assaulted, and I could just see how it changed them, and they were just kind of weren't the same after that, and it affected me just because I cared for that person, and I just hate that they went through that experience, and it just changed them, and it really just kind of affected more than one person, I would say.
Affects a lot of people, not just the victim. Does anybody else have any more to say on that topic? Good on that?
Yeah.
All right. Next topic is racial discrimination. Now, I couldn't find very many like solid facts on like gender discrimination, or like I found a couple about social class, but that kind of has more to do with like the racial as well. Well, some of them. So we had to take a brief intermission because Julia's back hurt. But racial discrimination, I feel like that's a pretty big topic, especially now in 2020. A lot of shit was happening. COVID and the Black Lives Matter movement, all the protests. What do you guys think?
Honestly, I think that the criminal justice system, honestly, what that is a whole made up is the government. You know what I mean? I think that racial discrimination comes from the government. Like these officers are being trained basically, they're allowing them to get away with it, and so it's just going to continue to happen. They're going to abuse their power, and so I definitely think that stems mainly from the government, but also we need to do something about it. It needs to be rewritten, honestly, because
Yes.
like it definitely needs to be, all that shit needs to be gone over, rewritten, updated, because I know this for a fact that the original intent for the Constitution was actually supposed to be written rewritten every 10 years, and we haven't rewritten it.
And I'm sorry, this is completely off topic, but that Second Amendment with the guns, that was when it took 20 seconds to load a musket, okay? You had to put the gunpowder in there, the bullet, load it, it took a good 20-30 seconds for someone to load their gun. Now these things are semi-automatic, but that's not our point right now. That's not the topic.
We can come back to that,
the public
but
should be allowed to have those type of weapons.
But
You know
yeah,
what
they
I
don't
mean?
need
Yeah,
AKs.
they don't need-
I don't need to see some.
like
hunting
weapons,
like
okay,
that's
like, I understand
whatever.
that.
But I also
people on the
think
street should not just be able to get an AK and just go shoot up shit.
Yes, you're right. But we're getting off topic.
yes, we are. Okay, police.
Let's talk about a certain example. George Floyd. That was really big.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think the police handled that?
Not very well.
Not very well at all.
Yeah, no, it was very terrible. And honestly, I believe like shit like that happens because the justice system, like, it's so easy to become a cop. Like, you honestly, they don't really have much background checks. You just gotta be physical, um, somewhat smart, and you would get in there, and they're not really doing psychological tests on these people to find out who they really are, how do they think, their critical thinking skills. Like, it's so easy to become a cop. Like, honestly, if you took the training to like go into the military to become a cop, like, it would honestly be different. Like, they actually in the military, they find out what you're made of, and if you're not there to serve your country and do what you're supposed to, then they kick your ass out. It should be the same way.
I bet they lessened that now because ever since the George Floyd happened, all the protests.
No, it took.
But
it's
listen,
taken
listen,
them,
listen.
It's taken them.
Listen, in the protests, I feel like now they've lessened it because more people do not want to become cops because of how much shit they get now. So, like, I bet they've lessened their standards from.
They did. It takes 6 months to a year to become a cop now.
Exactly.
Yeah, it takes less time for them to become a cop than it takes me to become an esthetician. Like, that's tell me how the
crazy.
fuck that works.
Yes, that's crazy that it takes you more time to become an esthetician than it does to become a cop. What do you guys have to say about white Democrats and white Republicans have very different views of how Black people should be treated by police and the criminal justice system?
So, what are their views?
The statistic here says that white Democrats say Black people are treated unfairly than whites by police 88% of the time, and from the criminal justice, they're treated unfairly 86% of the time. What do you think?
I think that's correct.
Yeah,
You think that's correct?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Well,
It sounds
100%.
correct.
The white
Yeah,
white Republicans agree somewhat. They think that it's 43% of the time with police and 39% of the time. I think those are still kind of high.
Yeah, they're still. I don't know though, because
I mean, they're trying to make an effort to actually
Yeah.
understand it, I guess.
yeah, I don't. I mean, I'm a Republican. I'm more left Republican, but I'm Republican. That's what I'm registered as. That's mainly what I vote. And me personally, like, it's not all of us. I want to say that it's not all white Republicans. But I mean, a majority of them still are. I don't know what the word. They honestly, they're just racist. They're not all of us are racist, but a big group of the Republican Party is, and I think that's completely fucked up. But at the same time, we really would have to do the math and lay it down because that's still a pretty high number. Like, and 86% is. I mean, it could also be very accurate. You know what I mean? Like, we'd have to do the research on it, but it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me either when I took that down.
I feel like on that, like, whenever you hear your family's point of view, when it's just so different from yours, you're like, I just kind of, like, how do you think like that? Like, how is that not, like, a red flag in your head that's, like, that's not okay for someone to do? Like, why are you treating somebody different?
Say that sentence again.
I said, why should you be treating somebody different just because of their skin color? Like, it's very...
Well, Elias actually said something earlier about this. Hold the microphone.
All right. So what I was saying is, so we're at a time now where we just came out of a pretty rough time. We're like in the 70s, 80s, and 60s. Like, that era that's when we were having riots, like cops are beating the shit out of minorities. Like, it was just a wild time, and the people, like, in that time, the people now, they're like 80, 90, they have kids, their kids have kids, and they taught their children what they knew at that time. You teach your children what you know. And since it was hard times then, now that it's been a couple generations, there's still those teachings here, and really I feel like we just need to clear out, like, our justice system of those teachings. Like, that's really what it comes down to.
Like I previously said, like, we all.
Unfortunately, the other part of the video that we had taken, where we talk about the court systems, the prison systems, and the recidivism rate, that part of the video is unable to be put into my app that I'm using because of the technical difficulties that we were having on campus. But I will tell you kind of just a summary of what we talked about. In the court system part of the video, we talked about how certain minority groups are treated unfairly by the court system when it comes to their sentencing. And then we also talked about how people of power, like police and prosecutors, are not getting the appropriate sentence that person who's a civilian would get. And so we just talked about that, how it's unfair. In the prison system part of the video, we talked about how the prisons are dirty, and we compared our prison to Sweden's because their prison is like an apartment style, and they get to walk around with knives, and they get to have utensils, and they get treated as people. Whereas here in America, they are not using it as rehabilitation how they were supposed to. They're using it just lock them and throw away the key. And then in the recidivism rate part, we just talked about how our number of recidivism is much higher than any other country in the world.